Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of KOBCast. This week we are talking about Audrey, which is named after the amazing poet and women's theory and race theory writer Audre Lorde, who I absolutely love. I absolutely love her work. I came to her as a poet first and then found out about her activism work, and it's just the coolest. So I named the shawl after her. And this shawl is in the first book of Knitting Outside the Box, and it is in the Mad Libs section of the exercises. And this is going to be incredibly hard to see. There we go. My prompts on that were cables, triangular, and diagonal. And so for me, that was a little bit of a gimme. I was like, oh, I want to challenge that a little bit. So what I went into and thought was like, well, what if I made not only a diagonal shawl, but had cables that traveled on the diagonal? So the entire texture of Audrey, which is knit in Miss Babs Keira, which is an absolutely beautiful fingering weight, the entire texture of the shawl is cables. This is all cables. So this is an excellent place to talk about cabling without a cable needle because heaven help you if you lose your cable needle in the middle of working the shawl. So I also wanted to show you my favorite part about it is that there is one point, come on little camera, there is one point where the cable's on the edge. Change direction. Because why not? And I'll show you that in close up from overhead so you can see what's going on. But it really is a great way to learn how to cable with a cable needle because you're going to get lots of practice. So I wanted to show you today how that's going to work.
So thank goodness for overhead cameras. You can see the cable texture on this and the cat hair a lot more easily. Lots and lots and lots of cables going on. And this is not a little shawl. So I wanted to show you how to cable without a cable needle to make this process easier and hopefully a little bit less intimidating. So here's my little swatch here. So what cabling without a cable needle does is what it says on the tin. You don't have to use a cable needle in order to manipulate stitches. And you do that simply by shifting them around on your needle. So say I wanted to do a cable where I took these two stitches and held them in front of these two stitches. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slide all 4 stitches purlwise. I'm going into them purlwise. I'm not changing the orientation onto my right needle. I'm then going to take my left needle tip and go through the front of the 2 that I want to be in front. Okay, I'm going to take my right needle out of all 4 of them. So right now these 2 are just kind of hanging in air. That's okay because very quickly I'm going to put my right needle back into just those 2 so that when I bring my needles to their normal position, I've switched the position of the stitches so that when I go to knit them, they're now in the orientation they need to be for that cable. And you can see I've now got a cable in my fabric without a cable needle. So let me knit a few stitches and let's do that again. Apologies for the neighbor's dog, which I'm sure you can hear. It's a very happy dog. So I'm going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, bring them onto my right needle. I'm going to take my left needle tip, go through the front of the stitches that I want to be in front. So because I want it to be a left leaning cable, I'm going to put these 2 stitches onto my left needle, pop those 2 stitches off, pop all 4 stitches off, and put those 2 stitches back on. I can then bring those back over onto my left needle, and as I continue to knit them, they're in position for the cable. So all I'm doing is I'm manipulating the order of the stitches prior to knitting them. Typically with a cable needle, you're manipulating as you go. What working without a cable needle does is it moves them around before you work them. So what about going the other direction? So move those 4 over. And if I want these 2 stitches to cross in front, if I want it to be a right leaning cable, I'll reach behind. Grab the backs of the far 2 stitches. Let them loose. Grab the loose ones back onto the left needle. And then across them. Sometimes a little tight, that's totally normal. Right leaning cable. So as you're working, the big thing to know when you're working these cable crosses is that the stitches on the right side of the cable are always going to be the ones that get the left needle tip. Through the front, if you're doing a left leaning cable. Through the back, if you're doing a right leaning cable. And then the 2 stitches on the left, or however many stitches are in your cable cross, those are your back stitches or your front stitches, depending on where this needle tip is. If the needle tip is in the front, these are the back stitches. If the needle tip is in the back, these are the front stitches. Okay, so think about that in the opposites. The needle goes in the back. The stitches that aren't on that left needle are in the front. The needle goes in the front. The stitches that aren't on that needle are in the back. We'll let all 4 of them loose. Tuck my needle tip through those 2 loose stitches. Transfer it back onto my left needle. Ready to work. And this is going to be the same for English and continental style. It should both work like that. So I've just done 4 total cable crosses in a row, none of which with a cable needle. How cool is that?
This is a super cool technique for saving a little bit of fuss, a little bit of time as you're working, and saving having to remember where you put that cable needle, because God knows that's hard. It does take a little bit of time to remember the pattern of it, but think about it in terms of which ones are going across the front, which ones are going across the back. Is it right leaning? Is it left leaning? That's going to help you figure it out. In addition, I probably won't let more than 4 stitches, that's 3, 4 stitches loose at a time. More than that, and they start to kind of bend on themselves, and it's hard to figure out which order to work your needle tip through. So when it's a 4/4 cable, that's about as high as I'll do a cable cross without a cable needle. More than that, I'm going to grab a cable needle so that I don't potentially mess up the order of the stitches as I'm threading them back onto the needle. So I hope this helps, and I hope that you can look forward to knitting Audrey without having to replace cable needles all over your house, so you always have one ready to go. All right, have a great week. We'll see you next time.